Hey, welcome to the Ron Johnson Discipleship Podcast.
Here we are again, working to bring the Lordship of Jesus Christ to real life. And what we're finding out, and what has been the premise of this podcast from the beginning, is that when we declare Jesus as Lord, we understand his superior wisdom, knowledge, blessing, authority for all of life. That's when we experience life to the fullest. And when we ignore him, when we deny his claims to our allegiance, when we deny his authority over every area of life, that's when it all falls apart. And man, is it falling apart. I mean, we always sit here, before we go into an episode and figure out what is it that we need to talk about. And the hard part is there are so many illustrations of the chaos that ensues when we reject the Lord that we could talk for days.
And why should we be surprised? Because history has shown us that has happened over and over again throughout history. Barbarism, chaos, anarchy,
tyranny, injustice,
throughout history. So and it just repeats itself.
And that's what I think I love about the truth about a Christian worldview is, eventually lies have a way of imploding. Yeah. And I think, so where do we begin? How about if we start by this crazy issue we're dealing with now of transgenderism, which flies in the face of logic, science, rationality. And we saw the height of this, on the news just this last week with the NCAA swimming competition, where the gold medalist, it was a transgender woman, I guess, a man who is swimming as a woman, biological male, and was awarded the championship, first place, while there's three other gals over here who are really the first, second, and third place winners who get gypped out of a chance to make history for themselves or to be the best at their event, all because of a man who was swimming as a male, who was not a very good swimmer as a male. I think he was ranked nearly like 500th in the NCAA or something like that. And then all of a sudden he decides he's a woman, and now the top, woman swimmer. Yeah. And there was, of course, I was glad to see there was a lot of outrage about that. Of course, the media always condemns and attacks anybody that would go against their crazy ideology. But I think what's really sad is this results in the cancellation of what it means to be a woman, period, in whatever arena of life.
Well, J.K. Rowling, who is the author of the Harry Potter series, who's no conservative. She's no conservative, and nor is like Jesus believe nothing like that. She is a self-proclaimed feminist. Yeah. But she is actually true to what she actually says. She's actually a feminist. She actually advocates for female rights. Right. And which I can align with on those terms because, we also want women to be healthy and
we believe that there are things called women.
Yeah, we love women and we have wives and daughters and she's been, ostracized and canceled over that belief, and probably more so than conservative because her voice carries so much more weight in the arenas that she gives.
Yeah, because she's not typically one of us. They can't just throw her in the category.
No one cares about what you and I think. We're conservative. We're wackos anyways. But here's a mainstream popular voice that many people follow. When she starts speaking, be like, wait a second. What does it mean to be a woman? You're based on your feelings, based on, this whole definition of there's a separation between biology and what you have and who you are inside. She starts questioning those things, and then she gets canceled.
I love, social commentator Matt Walsh. That's the question he always asks the left. Mm-hmm. Please define for me what is a woman. Because if we don't get back to definitions again, we ran into this in the state of Indiana when we were debating the whole marriage issue. Mm-hmm. Well, what is marriage? Until you know what marriage is, you can't really define who should be a part of it. But if you define marriage as a covenant relationship between a man and a woman, then that tells you who's not married or who's not capable or who's not allowed to be married. But you have to start with a definition. It's the same thing with what is a woman, because until we're able to sit down and define that, and of course we've always defined that with biology. There's like 650 scientific biological differences between males and females. I mean, so this is deeply rooted not only in science, but of course it's rooted in theology, because God from the very beginning creates male and female. And so we get right back to good theology determining good public policy, which always, the truth always lines up, theological truth always lines up with scientific truth. They're never at odds. All truth is God's truth. But when we stray away from that, we get into crazy things where you got, 6 foot whatever muscular woman swimming against normal biological females, and there's no question about who's going to win every single time when a female has to swim or compete in any kind of athletic competition against a male. Men are just created to be stronger, taller, physically stronger, and that's an unfair competition anywhere on planet Earth.
Yeah, I think even the Olympics, which is no conservative organization, has made some concessions. I read somewhere, I don't know specific, they have to measure the hormone level, the testosterone level, or something like that. I'm not exactly sure what it is. I think the NCAA hasn't made any concession, obviously, through these cases.
Yeah. So, well, and what's even more disappointing, what we just saw this week closer to home in Indiana, is our own governor vetoed the bill that was passed in this state to keep this from happening in girls' sports. Now, I have 4 daughters in Indiana. Yeah. And so I have 4 daughters, and some of them have played sports. But irregardless, if my daughter was competing in whether basketball or swimming or volleyball, and now she's having to compete against a male who is masquerading as a female, who's demanding the same locker room space, who's demanding the same playing time or whatever. I mean, my daughter has just been absolutely violated. Her rights have been violated. And this was good common sense legislation that just simply said biological males in Indiana should compete against biological males, and biological females should compete against biological females. And we need to protect women's sports in Indiana to keep what we're seeing in more liberal states from happening here. And our governor, again, a Republican governor with a Republican supposed supermajority of conservatives, and he vetoes this piece of legislation. Now, this was pure politics because, on the one hand, he confirmed the Second Amendment constitutional carry bill, which again is just a good common sense conservative piece of legislation that's good for everybody. So you don't want to have that on your record, right? That you're against the Second Amendment. But here on this side, and I think you and I are talking about it, this was purely a submission to corporate America and corporate interest and to dollars.
The commentary you and I saw said that, I think in a letter he wrote to the House or to the Senate, I don't remember which one, basically said the bill didn't go far enough. And the commentator is like, what do you mean not go far enough? Like, we're taking a step towards it. There's always work to be done in so many different ways. Just to veto because it didn't go far enough doesn't make sense. And I'm like, his thought was like, well, I think people are too, Republicans are too naive of what's coming, because part of the argument was that it's not happening in Indiana. He's like, but it's going to happen. Right. It's happened all around the country. And you and I said, I think it's less being naive. I think the governor knows exactly what he's doing. He's not being naive about it. I think that, I don't know, but I'm guessing there are corporate interests. There are deals being made. This is a sad thing. I don't know.
I was so sick of watching the NCAA tournament. While I love the sporting event, I'm so sick of the NCAA propaganda, because what's being pushed is all of this stuff about women's equity. And okay, equity meaning, how come we don't see more of the girls' basketball competition on national television? Well, the answer is simple. It's economics. It's because there's not as great of a viewership or as great of an interest across the board, period. It has nothing to do with penalizing women or being sexist against women. But the irony of the NCAA is, while they're pushing all this women's equity, they completely erase womanhood because they're also promoting all this transgender nonsense. And so you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't be pro-woman and then be pro-transgender, because as soon as you're pro-transgender, you just erase womanhood in its essence. So anyway, I get so tired. But you got the NCAA that's located in Indianapolis. You got, and this is the other thing, you got the Chamber of Commerce, who's promoting all of this kind of perversion. And so big money interests, corporate America, all of this is, in fact, one of the major automotive producers in the United States is promoting all of this women's equity stuff.
And the question, at least, we have to ask this, like, again, these philosophies they're promoting, which really defines gender very differently from what most people think, feel, what reality tells us, what's practical wisdom based on everyday knowledge.
Yeah.
Does it bring more joy? Does it bring more happiness? Does it set more people free? Or does it disenfranchise more people, whereas to satisfy a small group of people? And why would they do that? That's the question. What agenda are they really pushing?
Yeah, well, it is ideologically driven because your ideas have consequences, and we talk about that all the time on this program. Ideas have consequences, and those ideas will take you somewhere logically. And sometimes, again, when you build on a false premise or you build on a lie, you might start off, only a little bit off square in the corner here, but the farther out you go, the more out in la-la land you end up. And that's, I think, what the American people are realizing. This transgenderism is pushing logic to its illogical conclusions to the point where people are just going, what? I mean, I just saw we're not only dealing with girls who are confused about being boys who are confused about being girls, but now we're having kids that think that they're cats. I don't know if you saw this. They want to be identified as a cat, and when the teacher asks them a question, they meow. And if the teacher doesn't meow back, they're guilty of violating the student's rights. I mean, we're living in an alternate reality here that's ridiculous.
Well, again, I mean, this is where conservative states. Well, I shouldn't even say because I don't even know what that means.
What does that mean anymore? We're supposed to be one of
the difference in different states should say, look, we're doing what we're doing, and we're healthy, and we're normal, or prosperous, and our people are happy.
Absolutely.
And a bunch of people are moving into our states so much that they're jacking up prices up in their houses, which I won't even go in that.
And I love, you're exactly right. People are flocking to Indiana largely for economic reasons, but also for sanity reasons. But I was just in Florida. Thank God for Ron DeSantis. I wish our governor would take notes from Ron DeSantis because he's approaching all these issues with logical, common sense policy that it doesn't matter whether you're right or left or whatever. The typical person out there goes, okay, that makes sense. And their state is prospering. People are flocking to Florida.
Yeah.
And I think that will continue to happen across America. People leaving craziness over the border in Illinois, or you got California, you got everything out east. People are tired of this. And you're going to see it hit the fan because you can't live in irrationality and in a world that's insane and expect to have good fruit, as you were saying.
When you start to find that we're aligning with J.K. Rowling's on certain issues, we know that somebody's gone off the deep end.
Yeah, and let's talk about that because the other consequence here is as soon as you have the courage to say, no, 2 + 2 does not equal 10. 2 + 2 = 4. A male is a male. A biological male is a male. A biological female is a female. If you put on lipstick and a dress as a man, and you all of a sudden want us to call you a woman, we're not going to play the game. We're going to call the emperor out. The emperor's naked, all right? The emperor has no clothes. Now, all of the power brokers will come out and say that you're crazy. And they will punish you, just like I saw where the Babylon Bee got banished from the Twitter universe until they willingly take their offensive tweet off. They bow the knee to corporate America and to Silicon Valley. And all they simply said was that the USA Today's Woman of the Year, who's actually a man dressed like a woman, who's one of Biden's top officials, right? Rachel Levine, I think, is his name now. Because they called him a man instead of a woman. They were banned from Twitter universe. And what he's saying is Twitter's demanding that until they willingly pull that tweet off, they willingly bow the knee, basically say we were wrong, then they can't get back on the platform. And I love what this guy's saying. This is Adam Ford, the creator of Babylon Bee, which of course is a satirical news site. He says it's not just that expressing these views is not allowed. We have to deny that you meant it. They want you to concede something. They're forcing you to grovel and adopt an ideological position that you don't actually hold. Dylan shook his head. In this case, it's not even an ideological position that Twitter demands submission to. It's an outright lie. We stated the fact that a man is a man, and we got punished for it. He says we're living in a clown world. And boy, that is the truth. And I think most people realize we don't want to put on the clown suit and go along with the game. You know, let's stand up against it, because really what's at stake, and you were touching on this, what's at stake is free speech, which used to be a liberal talking point.
Yeah.
So talk about, you know, you've been listening to some voices that you normally would not be listening to.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably we're in a much greater conversation. You know, I follow a string of, you know, your YouTube viewer videos
Right.
based on the algorithm will display what they think you want to watch.
Right.
So, you know, I follow some of the conservative voices, and just I like to hear different, you know, perspective on that. But I mean, I'm not trying to. I'm like, oh, I'm interested in listening to this person, and then you know, it just follows the algorithm. And all of a sudden, more and more in my view pops up Joe Rogan. It pops up
Bill Maher.
Bill Maher.
Yeah, what's he doing?
Bill Maher. What's he doing on my YouTube channel? And then who was the other person I mentioned?
The one that was married to Katy Perry. Russell.
Bill Russell.
Russell Brand.
Russell Brand.
Yeah, Russell Brand.
I'm like, what's Russell Brand doing on my YouTube feed?
Yeah, those are not people that are usually in our corner on any issue.
You know, not a lot of alignment there. And but because the world has drifted, I don't even want to say the world, the corporate America,
yeah.
Big government, big pharma, big corporate. Big sports.
Yeah, Silicon Valley, all the IT people.
So the alignment of the power holders, which doesn't represent the people,
right?
But but it seems like it, because they control all the communication, whatever, and that's illusion.
Right, they have the biggest microphone,
but that's not representative of normal people. When they start drifting out of liberalism, which whatever how you define liberalism, into really tyranny, okay.
Yeah.
The true liberals who might not believe in God or align with us on many different issues, any of those issues, start to be like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
And they start calling out these guys, and they start popping on my feed. That tells me something's going on in this world.
Absolutely.
I'm not going around looking for Russell Brand videos, okay? He's popping up on my YouTube feed because what he says, I agree with. Like what he's saying now.
You and other conservatives are liking it.
Agreeing, whatever, more and more and more. I'm like, what is going on in the world? When Bill Maher and I agree on something, I used to not be able to stand that guy.
Yeah. He was always obnoxious and always very sarcastic and attacking towards anything that we hold dear. But they get it. They get it. They understand that unless they have the right to speak openly about what they believe, even if somebody else shares that same right, even though they disagree, if we allow that First Amendment right to be stripped from us, then nobody has the right ultimately to say anything. At some point, you're going to be disagreeing with someone in power, and then your right gets stripped and taken from you, and that is tyranny. And I think the left is starting to see it.
Well, some on the left, some who are independent thinkers on the left, and I don't think they even consider themselves the left anymore. Wait, the right and the left. I mean, and meanwhile, you got some people on the right who are going down that train. You got some people who are traditionally on the right who are more aligned with the liberal left than Bill Maher. Those who are supposedly on Republicans. That's where
this is interesting. Back to this the woman. Champion, who's a man, Leah Thomas. It says there was a group of people outside, a group of feminists outside the NCAA swim meet protesting. And one lady said the reason that the feminists were outside is because they are now politically homeless. Quote, I was historically liberal, one woman vented outside the girls' collegiate championship where Leah Thomas was racing. Now she says, quote, I don't think the Democrats care about women and girls. They want to put men in women's prisons and men on girls' sports teams. I think we're going to have a lot of people walking away. I think that's the truth. I don't know that, like she said, she feels politically homeless because I don't think she feels homeless being a Republican or conservative, but she certainly doesn't feel at home being a Democrat because she used to be someone who stood and still is someone who stands for women's rights and typical women's issues. And now the Democrats don't even know what a woman is.
Well, let's just say we just had a Republican governor who also do the same thing. So she is politically. If you advocate for biological men and women for separate sports, separate prisons in these very vulnerable positions or competition positions, you are, based on just a couple of things we said, are politically homeless.
And we're largely ourselves feeling politically homeless. Because whether you're on the left or you're on the right, we're living in such an insane, crazy world. If you can't even figure out what a man is or a woman is, or you can't define what marriage is, or you can't define a baby in a mother's womb as a human being made in the image and likeness of God that deserves protection, I mean, we've lost our minds.
You being a Republican, anyone being a Republican means nothing to me anymore. I mean, that phrase just cover things up. Yeah. It's like when someone says, you know what, I'm a pastor. I'm like, okay.
What does that mean?
What does that even mean anymore?
Are you even saved?
Yeah, I'm a Christian. What does that even mean? I mean, those words, we have diluted those words so much.
Yeah. Well, and I just want to say we have a May 3rd primary coming up. We have an opportunity for a lot of change. There have been a lot of candidates slated to run against even incumbent Republicans across the state who are sick and tired of politics as usual down in Indianapolis. So this is an opportunity for us to do a lot of change. You know, we're promoting voter registration, as every church should in our local church, making sure that our people are registered to vote, making sure that they see that as a sacred honor in this country to be able to elect those who represent you. So I'm praying for a lot of change and hoping for a lot of change even in our own state. So just encourage y'all to get involved. So that was the first kind of half of our podcast today. But, you know, as you all know, we've been talking about this very, very important topic called shame. And shame is like the oxygen. It's like the air that we breathe as fallen people. And getting free from shame and understanding the role that Jesus plays in setting us free from shame is really the first step to a pathway of a life filled with joy and love and peace and all the things that are part of the kingdom of God. And so it's been great. I appreciate it. We've been kind of bouncing back and forth in this teaching series and been getting a lot of really good feedback from it.
Yeah.
Last thing I talked about on Sunday was, a couple of things, the back-to-back weeks, I guess, but we've been talking about how Jesus really goes out and attacks shame. His goal is to restore and to heal. And Jesus is a master surgeon. And so he is not going to allow us to, because shame isolates us. Shame keeps us from relationships with each other, from our relationships with him. So his primary goal, and after getting our hearts converted, is then to free us from the debilitating effects of shame. And we use the example of Peter. I can't imagine. John's gospel talks about, when that fateful night when Jesus told all the disciples, he says, "You're going to desert me, every one of you. The shepherd is going to be stricken, and all the sheep are going to run." And Peter said, "I'll never deny you. I will never turn my back on you." And these guys might, but I won't. And of course, we know what happened. Christ's words were true. And in fact, John's gospel tells us that on that night, before the rooster crowed and Peter denied Christ for the third time, that Jesus and Peter caught eyes. And I can't imagine how the devil played on that moment just to pile shame and heap shame upon Peter's heart. I mean, looking into the eyes, and Peter loved Jesus and Jesus loved Peter. That wasn't the issue, but Peter realized at that moment he had just fulfilled the prophetic words of Christ over his life. And I can't imagine the depth of pain and shame that he felt. In fact, the Bible says he left weeping bitterly. And then Peter did something that many of us do. We say, you know what, I quit. I tried Jesus, I tried the church, I tried to be a good Christian, and I'm just ultimately, I'm a big loser, and I'm done. And Peter went back to doing what he was comfortable with, which was fishing.
Yeah.
And And what I appreciate about Peter was we give him a hard time, but Peter was a leader because the other disciples followed Peter. So basically, all of the 12 pretty much turned in their Jesus card or their disciple making card, and they just said, "I'm done. We're going to go fish." And it's interesting that that's what shame will do to you. If you and I try something and we fail, then the devil piles on shame, and then what the message is don't ever try that again because you can't do that. You're not good at that. People will laugh at you. People will make fun of you. You don't measure up. You don't have what it takes. All those messages that shame likes to amplify in our brains. And Peter and the 12 were there. They just said basically, let's go back to doing what we know how to do well, catch fish. And the irony of it is they weren't catching fish that well every time Jesus showed up because they had spent the night fishing twice, all through the night, caught nothing. Yeah. And so there's Jesus on the shore, and he calls out to them, "Hey, kids, children," because that's what that word meant in the Greek, was little kids who were still under the supervision of a mature adult. So, hey, kids, how'd you guys do last night? And of course, the answer was they caught nothing. And then at that moment, they realized it was Jesus. And Peter's the first one out of the boat, swimming into shore. And of course, that's the famous passage in John at the end of John's Gospel where Jesus asked Peter 3 times, "Do you love me?" And first of all, he asked him, "Do you love me more than these?" And we highlighted the fact that these were the 153 fish there on the beach because Jesus was taking Peter back to the original call, where he said, "I'm going to teach you how to fish for men, not for fish." And it says in that earlier passage, when they went ashore, they dropped their nets, they left everything, and they followed Jesus. So Jesus is really about going after Peter's calling.
Yeah, it's the voice of shame is that you are not enough, and you're not valuable. The first one is you don't have what it takes, and that's why failure produces such a huge degree of shame. Yep. And that's basically what happened to Peter. Is Peter, when he denied, when in the face of persecution, in the face of possible being arrested, possibly being even crucified with Jesus.
Yep. Even being associated
with him
in any way.
The fear came upon him. Who he really was revealed, and he was not enough. He denied Christ. When he thought
at the moment of testing, he failed the test.
He failed the test. So that wasn't like a theoretical failure. That was a tangible shame. Yeah. When shame comes on Peter, he has no defense.
Right.
He's like,
because it's true. I did fail. I denied him.
I messed up. We all understand that. This is not just like, people made fun of me or whatever. This is like, no. When the moment came for me to lay my life down for my Savior, for my Lord, nope, I fail. Yep. And out of that, what was our reaction in the middle of that? And I think we all experienced that before. Is I'm going to go back and do something that will make me feel better about myself, make me feel like I am capable.
He removed himself from a shameful place. He left. Yeah. He literally ran away and he wept. So he's distancing himself. And it's interesting, because I talked about this. If I had an agenda, I only got 40 days between the resurrection and the ascension. What am I going to do? How am I going to strategize that the use of my time wisely? And I find it interesting that one of the first things Jesus does is he goes after the guys that all deserted him at his moment of greatest need. So I think this is a good message for all of us. When we do fail and our failure is real, like Peter's was real failure, the Lord doesn't cancel us like our culture's trying to do today. He actually seeks to go after us to restore us. He wants to take the shame off of us, and he wants to restore us to proper relationship. And that's exactly what Jesus does with Peter.
Well, and I love that story because Jesus came back. So Peter's out fishing because he's trying to cover up his shame by saying, well, here's one thing at least I think I'm competent in. Right. And of course, as he went out to do that, he's probably encountering more shame. He's probably thinking, well, I denied Jesus.
And now he spent all night fishing and couldn't catch one.
I can't even catch fish. So he's probably feeling even more shame in the middle of all that. I've been there before too.
What am I good at?
Go back to the one thing I'm good at. I'm like, well, I guess I'm not that good at this either. And in the middle of that, Jesus came and he invited them to come out. Yeah. He shows them, first of all, that in our own strength, we could do nothing.
Yeah. Well, I love the practical side of it. He cooks a meal.
Through him, they caught the mega fish low with his power
because of his word.
Because of his words again, which is a reminder that even we're like, I don't need God. I'm just going to do what I'm good at. Well, really, are you really even good at that without God? No, you're not, right? So there's awakening there.
Jesus' words make no sense to a fisherman. Throw the net out on the opposite side of the boat as if 6 or 8 feet is going to make that much difference. But with Jesus, it makes a huge difference. So you're right. He provides a supernatural catch.
So he first showed them your ability means nothing anyways, which is interesting in itself because Peter beat himself up because I don't have enough perseverance. I don't have character. And Jesus is like, well, I didn't expect that from you. I knew that you didn't have that anyway. So there's an exposure of what we thought we had.
Peter's personal strength, anyway. Peter's personal knowledge of fishing, his expertise, none of that is what the Lord's looking for.
So there's a deeper level of brokenness. Now, Peter's still being broken, right? But what did Jesus do in the middle of his brokenness? He invites him to food.
Let's have some breakfast together.
Yeah, he invites him to fellowship.
And I love that. We highlighted the word. It says in the Bible that he created a charcoal fire, and it's the same word that's only used one other time in the whole Bible. And it's used for the fire that Peter was warming himself with on the night he betrayed Christ 3 times. So Jesus is masterfully recreating the elements that stirred up in a sensory way, stirred up all the moments where Peter is being brought back to his shameful experience. And Jesus is doing this on purpose. Peter's literally reliving his calling. He's reliving his denial. And now Jesus is calling him back and saying, Peter, do you love me more than all these fish? In other words, will you go about the mission that I called you to in the first place? You're not a failure. I'm not going to let you quit. I'm calling you back. And 3 times, Jesus' response is, feed my sheep. In other words, get back to caring for my people, loving my people, leading people to Christ, and making disciples.
I love it because many times if my kids are struggling to emotionally overcome to do something they need to be doing, I actually have them confess it with their mouth first.
Wow, that's good.
Because you confess with your mouth first. There's a neurological side to it, and there's a spiritual side to it. You speak it first, and then you feel it. It's like I don't want to be thankful. I'm just dude, you had a great day. Okay. Why don't you start by just saying, hey, I am thankful. I know you don't feel it. I'm not trying to force it upon you legalistic. I just want you to confess it first.
Right.
So just say, I'm going to try to be thankful. I'm going to try to be thankful. Just try confessing.
I think of that scripture that says, this is the day the Lord has made. I will rejoice and I will be glad in it. When you make that declaration at the start of a new day with your mouth, then it sets the course of your journey for that day.
That's a great point. You're really saying, you know what, I am in charge of my emotions and not the other way around. I am going to take control. And with my kids, they're young, they don't get all that, but I'm trying to teach them just elementary stuff.
That's good.
Just confess that a little bit. I think that's what Jesus was doing to Peter. He's saying, hey, do you love me? And he's allowing Peter, through his pain, processing his weakness, his brokenness, to say, no, Lord, I do love you. Yes. I do love you. Maybe not in a perfect way, but I do love you. Feed my sheep.
I love this too. Jesus, he doesn't interrupt a nice meal. Everybody's eating, but it says when the meal was finished, he goes right after Peter. Yeah. Peter. And he goes after the elephant in the room, which was the shame.
Yeah.
And he calls him Peter. And of course, Peter was a nickname. It was a term of endearment. Peter's name was Simon. And Simon means a reed that's bent in the wind. And Jesus calls him Peter, which means rock. Yeah. And so literally Jesus was calling the destiny out of Peter. Jesus saw something in Peter that Peter did not even see. And by naming him, and it was, again, a term of endearment, which is a term he goes back to, which shows Jesus is talking to him as a dear friend.
Yeah.
And then I love it because we know how history unfolds. Peter, of course, ultimately gives his life. He's crucified. He told his oppressors that he was not worthy to be crucified like his Lord. He was crucified upside down. And Peter passes the final test. And of course, we're still talking about Peter. Peter's one of the foundational pillars in the Church of Jesus Christ. He preached the first message on the day of Pentecost, which led to the birthing of the Church of Jesus Christ, which is now global and continuing to grow even as we speak. And so what a great story of the power of the love of Jesus to go after and attack and kill and destroy the shame, because what he's really after is relationship with us. He loves us so much. He loves you so much And I just want to ask you, as we kind of close this podcast today, what are the areas of shame, the pockets of shame that are still in your heart, that are keeping you at arm's length from the one who loved you so much that he died for you, the one who loves you so much that he wants to spend eternity with you? Let's deal with the shame. Let the Lord expose those lies in your heart and those shameful things from your past that keep you a prisoner to the present and keep you looking in the rearview mirror instead of looking into the future and the great life that God has for you.
I think shame has so many unintended consequences when you're dealing with it. I mean, I think about just even the stuff we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Just the mess we have in women's sports, with women prison, just the feeling that you're not enough, that you have to compete and win this championship when you're biological male. I mean, just the shame involved in all of this. And then our heart is not to throw more shame upon this person or whatnot, but man, shame, how shame just propagates into more shame, into these other ladies who lose. Right. And it just causes more shame when people, because the ultimate journey, the ultimate narrative the enemy's trying to come to every single one, whether you're a Christian or not, is that you're not enough. And to feel enough, you have to do different things to your body. You have to do different things to, you have to be canceled. You have to cancel somebody else. You have to shut other people's voice down. And it's all rooted in shame. It's all rooted in you're not valuable.
Think of the message of shame in like the transgender folks. It's basically saying, you're really not who God made you. You're really not a male. You're really not a female. You're really the opposite gender. You're not enough. You're not who you think you are. You're not really a woman. So now you're going to try to become a man. I mean, the lie is you're never measuring up. You're never good enough. And obviously, from objective reality, the goal is not to pile more shame on these people. The goal is to say, hey, you are a man or you are a woman. You're confused right now. You feel like you're not enough, but you need healing. You need help, and that's what compassion does. So we don't condemn people. We're not putting shame on people, but we are saying that to live a lie leads you on to unintended consequences that ultimately destroy you.
And deeper source of shame, deeper source of there's no freedom in this. Right. And what we really want is for freedom for everybody involved. We don't want to throw anyone under the bus. We don't want to cast a stone at Leah Thompson or whoever else. Yeah. But man, it just propagates shame. And then what happens is shame shuts people's voices. Right? And that's what censorship does. Oh, I've been censored. Now I can't speak. Well, that's more shame. Shame on you for speaking out on this issue. Right. You don't care. You don't do all these different things, Shame it's like a virus. It just propagates itself.
And maybe it's a good place to close because with back to the Babylon Bee people, he said at the end of the day, the more cowardly we are as a movement, the more likely it is that the cancel culture will take over the marketplace of ideas. And we don't want this to happen. So I think we need to be more bold. We need to be more open about our beliefs. The best way you can help, Dylan agrees, is never censor yourself. Insist that 2 + 2 make 4, even if Twitter tries to compel you to say otherwise. Continue to say what's true, even if it has consequences. He says, make them ban tens of millions of us. And I like that approach because, I go back to the whole women's sports issue. If that were my daughter and she was playing on a women's intercollegiate sports team, I think what would need to happen is that the whole team says, look, if this man is going to swim in a women's event, then none of us are going to participate. What would happen if the entire field of women's athletes said, you know what, we're not going to take part of this, basically a mockery and an abuse of women's sports? Then something would have to happen. But as long as we're complicit, as long as we jump in the water, as long as we go on the playing field, as long as we put up with the myth, then everybody loses. And so it's time to stand up. It's time to be strong. It's time to be courageous. It's time to never silence yourself because of fear. Always speak the truth. Speak it in love, but speak the truth. And at the end, the truth will win. It always does. And that's what this podcast is committed to. So thank you all for watching. I want to encourage those of you who maybe think, wow, I like what you guys are talking about, shame, please go to our website at elstones.org. We have on our media section all this series. I think we're in week number 8 right now coming up. And I know there's a lot of great truth that you can find there that will really help to set you free and minister to your heart. So until next Thursday, thanks again for watching. Please help us share this podcast far and wide. We'd love to hear your comments, all right? God bless you and have an amazing week.